Hi, and welcome to God's Lovebank. I'm Steve Bailey. So glad that you decided to join us tonight as we study together from God's Word and from a biblical curriculum called God's Lovebank. Our host tonight is the minister of the Ministry Church of Christ and best-selling author, Dr. Tony Roach. Dr. Roach, a great Monday to you, and good to see you tonight.
I'm starting out this Monday the same way I started last Monday.
What about it?
This is a magnificent Monday, Steve.
All right. I'm looking at my adjectives. What can I use? What did you say? Magnificent?
Magnificent. Tomorrow will be a terrific Tuesday.
All right.
You've heard people use those expressions at times. You know what, that really is a good way of making a deposit in the bank of your soul.
Yes.
I look for love deposits and withdrawals everywhere I can get them. And so, that's a great way of doing it. I have a friend, every time you talk to him and you say, well, how are you doing, Emmanuel? He says, better than good.
Yes.
And after a while, you want to say, is there any day that you don't have that's better than good? I have another friend, he's an islander on the island of Bermuda, and every time you talk to him and you ask him, how's he doing? The first thing he says is, I'm just thanking God for another day.
All right.
Every time. I mean, it's just like, and I thought about that. That's deposit thinking. It's also new self-power. You know, it's proactive thinking rather than reactive thinking.
Seems like you're setting things in order that way.
Yeah,
You know
what the Bible says. Proverbs 18:21.
Yes.
The law of life and death
is on the power of the tongue.
On the power of the tongue.
Yes.
And they that love it
yes.
will eat the fruit thereof. Anything you love, you're going to seek to understand.
I like when we talk to Christians and they say, I'm blessed.
Yeah,
they'll say, I'm blessed.
Oh, that's
and that says it all right there.
Yes. So starting off with a love deposit, and where are we going today?
I know that our last show we've been talking about the values of Jesus Christ. And we've been looking at beliefs, attitudes, and yet specifically the values of Jesus. And just, Dr. Roach, very instrumental, very helpful information. I know that's where we want to kind of lead off tonight.
And I love talking about God's Love Bank because, literally, I am God's Love Bank.
Yes, yes.
I have had an experience here recently with the Oprah experience and a rainbow experience that I've come to the conclusion that all of that was about teaching me a lesson. The lesson about my own self, my own worthlessness had me almost hesitant and sometimes temporarily inconsistent about the whole notion of God's Love Bank. I could tell you are God's Love Bank and talk to other people about God's Love Bank, but my old self-love was robbing me of the blessing of saying and knowing and claiming and owning I am God's Love Bank. Not only in spirit, but in theory, but also in truth. And so that paradigm shift has changed me. I think that that's a very important paradigm shift for every person. And so that's part of my mission now. I want to help people to know you are God's love bank.
Right,
but
right.
It comes to a point where you have to claim it yourself. What do you think about that, Steve?
You have to own it. And you shouldn't be afraid. I know that, fear is natural to be afraid of something. But as we understand who we are, where we come from.
What happened with me, which is so significant. Now you have to understand, I have an old self-love and a new self-love. We'll be talking about that as we talk about the new self-love core values of Jesus.
All right.
Now, in my old self, I would devalue myself. I would underestimate my worth. And that's part of my old self logic. See, and everybody got their own old self logic now. And we'll talk about that down the road too.
Right.
But now I realize, and I didn't realize it until I was in Hollywood, California. I had just walked off the Oprah Winfrey show.
Right.
And I had chose to eliminate myself. And I was standing there, and God showed me a rainbow. Now, a lot of other people saw it, but as far as I was concerned, that was not a rainbow.
That was for you.
That was for me.
Yes.
What it was all about is everything in life happens to us for either good or bad to teach us something about ourselves.
All right.
What that was teaching me was, even though I wrote and teach and preach about God's Love Bank and have been doing it 25 years, I had really not fully understood the reality of I am God's love bank. And it's a paradigm shift, like something I can't explain other than what the Holy Spirit does when he says, by the renewing of the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And you remember how the Bible talks about the old self and how it has to be renewed
Yeah.
in spirit, you see.
Right.
So anyway, that has just been a phenomenal. So I love talking about God's Love Bank.
But you actually showed God's Love Bank in being on the Oprah Winfrey Show. You actually put it into practice.
I went on the show. I promised God 3 things. One of the things I promised God was that I would live in my new self-love 24/7 the entire time I was on the Oprah Winfrey Show, in spite of whatever the competition was and in spite of what happened. Okay.
Yes.
And I was God's grace, and I was blessed enough to be able to do that. And I mean, I did that, and I'm proud of that.
Amen.
And my decision to choose to lead the show had nothing to do with Oprah Winfrey or anything like that. It was God teaching me something about myself. He took me from the hood to Hollywood. He was teaching me something about myself. And that's a personal thing. And you know, when you get to that point in God's Love Bank, where it's a personal thing between you and God, now that to me is what he was teaching me. One soul at a time, starting with mine.
Right.
Helping people to understand that point, where you come to a point in your life where you really, truly believe you are in fact, and in theory, in actuality, God's Love Bank, your spirit, your soul, and your body. So that's why I love talking about it.
I know you mentioned it before. It wasn't just about the show. You impacted people's lives. The other contestants, you made a difference by sharing with them these principles as well. And
I had tremendous experiences on that show by using tools of thinking from God's Love Bank and other things. Like love deposits and withdrawals.
Yes.
My team, the team I was on, I taught them that.
That's right.
If I'm going to go for some competition, we might as well go, and it was making deposits rather than withdrawals. Now the challenge with that is everybody don't operate by faith, hope, love, purpose, and good
All
news.
right.
Some folk operate by fear, worry, doubt, pain, and bad news. And some of my contestants, you know. So what motivates us, is it fear or is it faith? Well, on my team, that's one of the things that wasn't shown on the show. That was the beauty. It was some beautiful things that happened on that show. You know, I'm working with people. I work with people all the time.
Yes,
so
yes.
we're gonna go for this thing. I'm giving 100%, and we had a good time. That part was not shown. You see.
And I think you did a great example, and I think you made God look good.
I received emails from all over the country and overseas, people who weren't even in the United States know about it because they voted. I mean, they couldn't vote and wanted to vote to get me on the show. And so I got all these emails, and the emails were very positive, you know. There comes a point where you must not cause someone else's demise so you can get your gain.
All right.
That's not living your best life. That's why I believe that Oprah is a great person, because she helps people to live their best life. Now, I'm not talking about her beliefs, her philosophies. I'm not dealing with any of that.
All right, yes.
I've also become very aware of how people's perception of other people can affect you. You know, I happen to think Barack Obama is a great person. I happen to think that George Bush is a great person. Bill Clinton, I had a chance to receive a letter from him. I think he's a great person. When you start talking about great people, how many lives have you impacted? How many people have you helped for the better? What kind of good have you done on this earth? That's what makes me gravitate toward people. Great people do great things.
And that kind of goes into what we want to talk about tonight with their value system. You know, people have great values, and as we draw closer, we've been talking about the values of Jesus.
Yes.
And so I can see how that's kind of tailoring right into what we've been talking about.
As a matter of fact, when we look at the ministry of Jesus,
yes,
we see that he taught people to empty themselves of old self-love values and to fill themselves with new self-love values. Now, scholars call this they call it a word called kenosis.
All right.
The emptying out of something and the pouring in to another. It's what the Bible refers to as Emmanuel. It's God with man. It's Jesus who's with heaven. Thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but he humbled himself and came down and took on the form of a servant.
I see
and
that.
Became obedient even to the cruel death of the cross.
Amen.
And he emptied his divinity.
Yes.
To live in our humanity.
I like that.
And that is so powerful. But when he gets on earth, he comes and almost does the same thing. he comes and now he starts teaching people about core values and how that the core values is the missing ingredient in the permanent and lasting change. He didn't target people's behavior. He targeted people's core values. And we find him coming onto the scene, and he meets a woman at the well.
Yes, yes.
And the woman walks up to him, and they have a dialogue about worshiping in the mountains and all of those kinds of things. And Jesus thought it not necessary, or he thought it was not necessary to continue to talk with her about mundane things. He went right to her core value. He said, "Lady, let's talk about your sex life."
Yes, he did. Oh, man.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Didn't he do it?
He did.
He did that. Now, how did he do it? Well, he said, they got to talk about marriage. He said,
go call your husband.
Go call your husband.
Yeah.
He almost said, go tell your husband. And she said,
I don't have a husband.
I don't have a husband. He said, "You lying?
You're right. You had 5 husbands.
You are lying.
Oh.
You have 5, and the one you with now is not your own."
So what you're saying is he went right to the value system of that lady.
He went to the core value of new self-love, which is the love and intimacy in my single most important relationship with God, which affects every significant relationship in my life.
All right.
He started talking to the lady, and before he got finished with that lady said, "Come and see a man.
Come and see a man
who told me everything about myself." This man didn't focus on my behavior. He wasn't caught up on what church I was worshiping in. He wasn't caught up on the worshiping in the mountains. He got past that. He went right to the core value and told me things about myself I didn't even know. She had a testimony, didn't she?
Do you think even though it was strong to her, wasn't he loving her?
Yes. You know, so many people don't understand this. If you preach the gospel and you preach it like God tells you to preach it, there are times you have to preach it strongly in truth, but you got to do it in love. How do you do that? You create a context of love. One of the things that I think a minister does to create a context of love is he does the work that's necessary to prepare himself so that he can give people his best.
Amen.
And he doesn't come to the table half-hearted. He studies. I was talking to a young man. He was talking about how much education should you have as a minister. I said, how much education does a doctor have to be a doctor? A lawyer have to be a lawyer? As much as God chooses for you.
Right.
And so he went right to the jugular vein, her core values. We'll talk back in just a moment.
And I think even though he was strong, he still loved her. So that's amazing to me.
Watch the rest of the story.
Amen. Well, we're in the middle of God's Love Bank. We're just so glad that you decided to join us tonight, this great, magnificent Monday. We're going to take just a few minutes here, get a few announcements here at KG&Z, and we'll be right back with God's Love Bank. Hey, and welcome back to God's Love Bank. I'm Steve Bailey. We're so glad that you've decided to come back with us for our second half of our show. We've been studying the core values of Jesus with our host, best-selling author, and the minister of the Ministry Church of Christ, Dr. Tony Roach. Dr. Roach, as always, I'm glad to be here with you. And we're having a great discussion tonight about the values of Jesus.
I can't wait to finish telling the story about when Jesus met the woman at the well.
Amen.
It's a classic example of Jesus focusing on people's core values rather than their undesirable behavior. He knew that you can see the undesirable behavior, but he went past the undesirable behavior, the behavior that we tend to identify as sin. He goes right to her core values. And he was very concerned with restructuring her core values so she could get value clarification, value reformation, and start focusing on her core values rather than the undesirable behavior. And so he comes to the woman and he immediately addresses this Samaritan woman right at her value systems when he dealt with her sex life and love life.
Yes.
He knew that unless he dealt with her core values, any further specific positive change was limited, and that potential change within that woman would be fruitless unless he went to her core values. And I'm telling you that that's perfect timing. So as a means of helping this woman have permanent change in her life, he sought to change her value system. after he dialogued with her and taught her, the woman left, and she's quoted as saying to her friends, "Come see a man
Right.
who told me all things I've ever did."
Oh my goodness. So you had mentioned before, Dr. Roach, that we're talking about permanent and lasting change. And so how that's important. You're talking about people look at behavior, but we need to look
undesirable behavior.
Oh,
it's so interesting.
okay.
You got it right. You got it right. They look at behavior, but because of remember what we learned about the dual motivational nature of the soul?
Yes.
The first way we tend to look at behavior is the negative, the undesirable behavior.
All right.
So the tendency is, instead of focusing on the undesirable behavior of people, Jesus went right to the woman's value system and focused on core values, because he knew that unless he dealt with her core values, which seemingly here is the missing ingredient in permanent and lasting change.
Yes.
Is that the core values of a person where they really experience permanent and lasting change. What makes a drug addict change when he hit rock bottom?
All right.
People don't change normally because they just choose and like to. People change because they're spiritual or because of survival.
Yes. You know, and even with the story of the woman at the well, it appears that everybody was talking about her behavior. They knew what she was doing. And that's what I like about Jesus. What you're teaching is the fact that the value systems, changing that actually made a huge difference in her life.
We see many lessons of Jesus here. Here's Jesus. He's at the well. The water place where the well was really commonly known during those days in Israel, where men sometimes would litter around there because women were the ones who would come to the well to get water to go take care of their homes and take care of their master's homes or whatever. So
all right.
This had fluent traffic of women, and Jesus happened to be there. Well, the woman also knew that men come there. So she meets Jesus, and I mean, I don't think there's any thing we can insinuate here, but he dialogues with her about her relationships, you see, and then he got right to her core values. And so what we're trying to say here then, it's important to target the core values, not behavior.
All right.
And especially not undesirable behavior. You can see how the offense trap, remember we learned about that, how that it messes up people's relationships.
Yes.
Some people can't get past the offense, and now you can have a great relationship occurring, but they get offended, and we know everybody gets offended according to Jesus, Luke 17:1.
Right.
But now Jesus didn't focus on the offenses. He targeted the values. So God's Love Bank, this is why I love God's Love Bank, the program. It adopts the core values of Jesus as value targets to target people's behavior. So there are 5 things I want to tell you about God's Love Bank tonight.
All right.
Now, the God's Love Bank program is really a 5-fold spiritual growth program that helps us to change in the core values rather than in behavior. So the first thing it does is it's I call value targets. Value targets.
Yes.
Okay. See, if I target certain values, I can change better. Think about it. If I want to change, for example, when it comes to my finances, if I target the values in my soul to deal with my finances, wouldn't I have a better chance of changing?
Yeah.
Let me ask it this way. If you was to go into a computer and you had some money in your accounts, wouldn't it be better if you want to get some money out of your account, you got 15 accounts, and you knew that you have more money in your new self-prosperity account? Wouldn't it be wiser to go to that account than to go to another one?
It'd be a lot easier, yes.
That's what this is. I target behavior. So, I mean, I use that value targets. Here's what I like to say. Winston Churchill once said, the target is much easier to hit when you see it. The idea here is that if you have core values of Jesus as targets to shoot for, then you are now getting into his soul. You're getting into his mind. You're getting into his values, you see?
Yes.
So now if I get, for example, the new self-honesty, the honesty and truthfulness with myself in my single most important relationship with God and the Holy Spirit. Now, if I just target that when I begin to look at how to change or try to get permanent and lasting change, then guess what that does? I mean, after all, one of the first things you got to do, you got to be honest with yourself.
You got to be honest, yes. That's right.
You remember that time we had a discussion on the show, and we was talking about the difference in saying what you don't want and
Fame.
ignoring what you don't want and making it you're an illusion. You're dishonest with yourself.
Yes.
Remember,
Yes.
You can't be dishonest if you are going to have real, permanent, and lasting change. I mean, all of us got some degrees of dishonesty in us, but I'm telling you, when you get ready to change, whatever you got to change, you're going to have to be honest with.
That's right.
And so, see how value targets. Now, here's another part of this. These 15 core values, they are value models. Yeah, they're value models. You see, the notion of using the core values of Jesus as value models focuses on adopting Jesus's new self-love value system.
Right.
So if I want to get some values for my life, if I'm going to live my life and I want to get some values for my life, why not choose the core values of Jesus?
It's a simple choice.
I mean, we know that Nelson's research says that when we can find someone that we highly esteem and we model their values, then we will tend to do what they do. People used to say, I want to be like Mike. People began to model the people that they highly esteem. Well, who better to highly esteem?
Well, you see that in the world. Yeah, you see that in the world. People do it in business. They do it in sports. Things that they want to go ahead and draw closer to, that's who they model after.
So the way we want to handle this, we use value models, the 15 core values of Jesus. And I'm telling you, they cover all of our needs, desires, and wants. There's nothing left.
You talked about them last time. The values, we just covered a couple of them. I mean, when you mentioned forgiveness and courage and image, oh, Dr. Roach, that's extremely informative.
By the way, Steve, I wanted to just tell you on the air how proud I am of the way that you are working with me as a co-host. You're in purpose, and it's very obvious. And anybody who knows you knows your giftedness and talents, they can see it. And I'm so pleased to see you developing like you are in your purpose.
I appreciate the opportunity to serve. I really do. Thank you.
And so, value models, okay. So that's, value targets, where you target the value. Well, you deliberately target it. Then value models, well, what you do when you model a thing, what you do is you use Jesus' values as life models for you. So that's what I love about his stories and the parables. Because when I look at Jesus, I'm modeling, his values. And every time, Jesus is just outstanding, don't you think?
But you should be patient. If we're starting to follow the God's Love Bank program here, you got to give yourself a little grace. You have to be patient as you begin to change. Would you say, is that right? Am I seeing that correctly?
I think so. I think that once I have this model of how to grow spiritually in my thinking, it calms me down.
Yes.
Because I know I'm working on myself and I'm working on my purpose, you see. And I'm doing it as God's Love Bank. So now I'm not just working, I'm investing, you see. And I'm investing in the bank of my soul, knowing I can grow spiritually. Haven't you found it to be true at ministry with people who understand the concepts that I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. And I can see where people are more settled, more at peace. And so absolutely, that's what I'm saying, because sometimes as we change, we want it to happen overnight. And a lot of times we have to be patient with ourselves, allow God to do his work in our lives.
Listen to this. Remember I said 25 years of going all over the country and overseas teaching about God's Love Bank and telling people you are God's Love Bank. And I come to the realization that I have not valued totally the fact that I am God's Love Bank. That tells me there are millions of other people like me.
Yes.
Who for some reason just can't get to the point because of pain or hurt, because of family system stuff or whatever, to come to that point where they realize and they own and accept, I am God's Love Bank. That alone is probably a major deposit.
Yes.
And the Bible talks about it as the good deposit.
Well, we like that phrase that you always say, the good news is that the bad news is a lie. Yes. So the fact that if I feel like I'm in bad news, well, the good news is that it's a lie and that I can change.
Let's just speak to the audience about this. People who are listening to us tonight, the whole notion of God's Love Bank is really a very practical, systematic way for you to develop in your spiritual life. And it gives you practical ways to invest in the bank of your soul that allow you to be proactive where you can literally invest in your own spiritual growth. Steve?
I like that. I like that. Well, and as we're kind of closing in our Monday program, we certainly want to give Dr. Roach an opportunity to do the 1-minute love deposit. So, Dr. Roach, before we end our tonight's show, go ahead and do the 1-minute love deposit.
Steve, I'm going to throw something on you tonight.
Uh-oh.
Why don't you give the 1-minute love deposit tonight? Just come from your spirit. Receive the email from your spirit to your soul, and tell us what is the 1-minute love deposit tonight.
1-minute love deposit. Well, okay, I appreciate that. For me and for the audience, I would say tonight's 1-minute love deposit is don't give up on yourself. Trust God, allow Him to have His way in your life, to be free and to not be afraid, because for God says that it pleases Him to have faith. So have faith, don't be afraid, take charge of your life today and begin to know that I can change today, one step at a time. And if you change, I believe God's going to allow you to have that change, and He's going to free you to be everything that He created you to be.
I received that love deposit.
All right. Well, put me on the spot, but hopefully that was good for everybody. Well, we certainly hope you've enjoyed tonight's episode here at God's Love Bank. Tonight we looked at the values of Jesus Christ. If you have questions regarding the topics discussed tonight, we do certainly ask you to send an email to gary@kgnz.com or go directly to Dr. Roach's website, godslovebank.com. There you can send him an email or access his Facebook and Twitter accounts. We encourage you to be with us each Monday and Friday here at this station at 7 p.m. Again, we appreciate KGNZ for everything they do for the good news of Jesus Christ. Remember, they're listener-supported, so let's do everything we can financially to support them for Christian music and programming. For Dr. Tony Roach and the rest of the God's Love Bank staff, I'm Steve Bailey, praying God's continued blessings and success for your daily life. May God bless you here at KGNZ.